Hello, everyone. I hope you're audible and visible to the everyone on chat. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are all from different time zones, and I'm very happy to have Alex Melikhov from Equilibrium team, and I'm Vivek Prasannan from Polkadex. It is a pleasure to have him here today because we are partners in the present Crowdloan campaign that is going on. So I was actually looking forward to actually chat with you, and then probably discuss a few things about our projects and see how the whole ecosystem is shaping up, and have a very casual chat. I was just discussing that with him. Like, this is the first time that we are, getting together and getting to talk to each other. So it's really interesting, and looking forward to this evening, Alex.
Absolutely, Vivek. Thanks very much for having me. Real pleasure to be here on our sort of AMA session to touch base everything Polkadot, crowd loans, parachain auctions, DeFi and Polkadot, cross-chain interoperability and stuff. Looking forward to that conversation, by the way.
Great, thank you. So maybe I can give a brief idea about where Polkadex stands right now in terms of development and everything, and then I can just pass over to you, and you can take it up from there. Yeah, those of you here maybe for the first time, Polkadex is an order book based DEX, very focused on high frequency trading and native interoperability with other layer one blockchains. And we um, started the development almost a year and a half ago. In fact, started off with our Web3 grant proposal for an on-chain order book initially. And then once we started working on Substrate, we became a little bit more ambitious and wanted to actually come up with something really similar to what the traders are accustomed to in a normal centralized exchange. So we decided to take some features from the good features of DEX and then combine it with some of the facilities we have in centralized exchanges, and um, try to solve the probably what we think as the best example of how crypto tokens should be traded, and make Polkadex one of the go-to trading interface in the future. And while we are doing so, we have also tried to solve some of the pain points in the Ethereum ecosystem, like having the higher gas fees and the front-running issues while listing new tokens, and also while we were doing the IDO, the problems that we faced there. So we also try to resolve some of that issues, because we think that token listing as an IDO is also very much linked to the liquidity that will eventually end up in Polkadex because it's decentralized. And as far as our development roadmap is concerned, we already have a mainnet, and almost our order book and the IDO and all of those products that we are getting in shape is on audit right now, and we are expecting to release them to the testnet and eventually to the mainnet in the first quarter of 2022 this year. Yeah, so here we are. Alex, maybe you can just have a briefing on your side.
Sure. Yeah, very, very interesting path you guys undergone in this year and a half building your products, and actually, yeah, looking forward to your release this quarter. I think it will be really awesome to see how it will go and how it will work out overall. So just to give you a bit color on my background, and the background of my team and what exactly we're building at Equilibrium. So like myself, I'm the CEO and the founder with the Equilibrium team. We've been building decentralized applications since 2017. So we're kind of a mature team in the space because we've been building like in the various ecosystems. We started with Ethereum, but then we were looking for more network capacity, and actually the overall cross-chain interoperability was always in our minds to when we were building like things on heterogeneous chains like Ethereum, and also we had experience on EOS, and eventually we we've been watching the progress of the Substrate framework development, and we've been watching very closely the Polkadot progress, because I have friends of mine who are actually the developers, the core developers in Parity, and they were constantly keeping us in the loop of their developments, just sharing their thoughts on their future, like how exactly they envision the future of their network. And so eventually found out that the Substrate framework as a development framework actually sustained, and it was ready for kicking off the development there. And we actually had a kind of greenfield to design the system, and what we had in mind is to build up the sort of all-in-one platform which will embrace all the kind of imaginable use cases in DeFi under one umbrella. And actually, given that we were building before building on Polkadot, we were building constantly like some leverage products, some lending products on other chains. We have kind of a lot of expertise in building this type of things. We decided to build sort of money market first, which includes obviously the pooled lending functionality. And on top of the money markets, we're actually building the spot markets functionality with leveraging, like with up to 20x leverage. And this spot markets is highly very much connected with the money market, because the liquidity for leverage is actually coming from the money markets. And another thing which is quite important, that we have brought up quite a lot of innovation in the space. Some parts of the system have never been implemented before in DeFi. So, for example, instead of taking the approach of, like, in terms of obviously pricing of loans in the system, we're not taking the approach of utilization, like it's implemented in different money markets, like Aave or Compound. Instead of that, we're taking the risk-based approach, which is inherited from traditional finance, and we have the risk assessment mechanism within the system, which is constantly monitoring this overall system solvency, the volatility of underlying portfolio, and also the situation in particular user positions. And based on that, we're making decision what exactly will be the price of particular loan for the user. And this is very different to what other protocols offer in DeFi, because actually borrowers, they can affect the interest rate they're paying on their loans. So the less volatile collateral you set, the more collateral you provide into the system, the less interest you'll be paying on your loans. So this is completely different user experience compared to other money markets. So another thing which is very important in terms of equilibrium is the portfolio margining, because we are considering the user assets within the platform as a portfolio rather than a single sort of collateral walls or something. And that makes also a lot of sense and significantly reduces the risk of users of the system. And the third innovation, which is quite important, is the bailout functionality, which is opposed to traditional auctioning for liquidations, which is used in different other protocols like MakerDAO, for example, or again, Compound or Aave. Instead of that, we have the specific role of bailsmen in the system, who are acting as liquidity providers, and they are actually securing loans, like the whole bunch of loans in the system. And by providing liquidity in advance, they are securing these loans again in advance as well, and this makes the system very much balanced. So in case of some market crash or turmoils, we don't require any kind of how chaotic actions from the side of whatever market makers or keepers who are actually wiping out the debts from the system, and we were just transferring the debt obligations from one counterparty to another, which is fairly easy procedure. So in terms of like how far with the developments, we have got the slots on Kusama just yet, and the money markets is launched into production. you can play with that right away at genshare.io. Currently, we're also competing for the slots on Polkadot, and besides that, we also have launched, by the way, the xDOT functionality, which allows for keeping your DOT liquids if you are contributing to crowd loans. We are proudly supporting Polkadot during their crowd loan campaign, and if you guys are considering Polkadex as a project where you want to contribute your dots, you can do that via xDOT, and you will get the xDOT wrapper. Currently, the xDOT wrappers are issued on Genshare. You can use that in our money markets, and eventually we will be launching also the automated market maker for swapping your xDOT for dots. And eventually, like your dots, which you locked for specifically for Polkadex, will be also liquids, right? So you will be keeping up with your liquidity even when your dots will be locked for the crowd loan for 2 years. So that's in a nutshell what we're building. Sorry for being long with the introduction. There's kind of a lot of things going on and on our side. So hopefully
not at all.
Everything makes sense.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to give you time to talk, because you have a lot to speak, because you've been building for the last several years. Like you said, you started working on Equilibrium from 2017. So that's a long history you have to show, right? So, yep. But when you compare that, yeah, for ourselves, it's been like a very short journey. Like even then, we were able to pull through a lot of things in a very short span of time. But definitely, I think it's a very fast-moving space, and many of the decisions that we take along the way needs to be flexible, right, based on the developments in technology and how things shape up. So you said something about, like you were looking at Ethereum first, and then you gradually moved on to Polkadot, or what was the reason behind, like when you started working on Substrate? How did you start off? Was that a choice?
So actually, in between Ethereum and Polkadot, we also had a period of time when we were based on EOS. We were building the decentralized stablecoin called EOSDT. It was quite successful at the scale of that ecosystem. However, again, so we always been thinking of interoperability as a sort of matter how we can reduce the development efforts if we want to onboard some new ecosystem into our DeFi sort of universe or product line, right? And actually, if you are building your core technology on some platform, which eventually supposed to be connected with other ecosystem, like essentially through bridges or something, that makes a lot of sense, right? So this reduces your effort significantly, and eventually you can basically just place your technology somewhere, expecting that there will be some bridges that will be connecting you with other blockchain networks seamlessly, and you will provide your users with like seamless user experience, and eventually it doesn't matter where exactly your core technology based on, right? So that was the main purpose of looking into various options where exactly we can build the core technology. And obviously, like from our standpoint, Polkadot or Substrate framework specifically is the essential choice here, like quite natural, and it's one of the most advanced platforms so far, right? So,
absolutely,
like,
yes.
what was your reason, by the way? I think it should be really the same, right?
Yeah, I think we didn't have to search around a lot, because we came to a conclusion by the time we were researching on the things that we wanted to modify on a consensus level. We looked around, and in fact, I was most inspired by one of the talks that generally when you do the research, you also go through some of the talks that happened during that time. So I was really moved by one of the talks that was given by Gavin Wood in Roundhouse, where he spun off a blockchain in 10 minutes. So coupled with that, the kind of as we have 3 co-founders, by the way, me, Gautam, and Dipanj. Basically we got together. In fact, working on another project which was more on the consensus layer. We were trying to come up with a different algorithm. So when we decided to build a DEX, we were looking to see, what other things that we can actually try and solve. So right away we decided, okay, it's the order book DEXes that are being, there's not much progress happening in order book DEXes, except for the fact that many of the on-chain and derivative markets are happening right now, with especially with DYDX and all those things. But spot trading on an order book DEX has been not been really researched upon on how to improve the experience and stuff. So when we looked at different platforms, the kind of architecture and the framework that Substrate gave. In fact, I was not even concerned about Polkadex. We were looking at how the framework behaved and the kind of designs that we wanted. We initially tried to bring down the consensus time. In fact, the first iteration of the order book DEX we demonstrated to the Web3 Grand, that was actually with 3-second block time. Because we were constantly trying to reduce block time, see how we can increase the throughput, because every other day probably Gavin would tweet that, okay, now we achieved 3,000. But then after some time, you then start talking about the real traders, the market makers and the traders out there. And then you would figure out that, okay, it's not just a matter of increasing the throughput, but also the latency of transactions that you have when you interact with an interface, right? So that again prompted us to have more intricate control on how the data has to be used for runtime. You have a limited real estate on runtime. So how to get these executions done. And that's when Substrate became very handy. You have these off-chain workers and all of those things coming together, and the ability to actually get that program to a hardware layer, right? If you wanted to have a different hardware-based trust, like in TEE, like Fala was working on that. That's what actually got us into TEE. Then we figured, okay, this is the best thing to do because you have native system-level control on the language. So ultimately, Rust was the basic choice, and that's how we ended up being in Polkadot.
Right.
And obviously, like we knew that interoperability was going to be big in Polkadot as well. That was also another reason.
Got it. Yeah, that's really interesting. And how do you deal with 12-second blocks? Just curious.
Yeah, right.
Because, yeah.
Exactly. So what happened is, in fact, after our research, we figured out that it's not just the throughput that is important when you design an application, right? So our design or our changes that we have done to the blockchain is specifically for supporting that application, right? So when you looked at the throughput, it was not really necessary to have this throughput, the block time getting reduced to the point, even if you make it 2 seconds or even 1 second, it's really not going to help the actual trader who's trying to, place the trades and interact with it, on the exchange. So what we needed was more of a high frequency architecture, which will allow those trades to go through. Because if you look in general, like out of the 100 trades that a bot is placing, probably 10 will go through. 90 of them, it will probably cancel, right? So how do you make that experience happen? So that's when we thought of, okay, how can we give that limited control to an operator, to have that security of funds on the blockchain at the same time, give a limited control so that it can happen in a native hardware environment, so that those trades can actually happen in a very fast way. That's why we had to combine that, so it probably required more effort in terms of integrating that, because there was no layer actually that helped Substrate interact with a processor like that. There was one of the teams that were doing it in Substrate, and we partnered with them, but effectively there were no. It was like a very rudimentary code. It was very difficult to get that knit together to interact with Substrate. Substrate is one of them. And then we figured out there are some native libraries available in Rust, which will help us do this job, which was found out later because nobody tried this, right? And this happened actually after Gautam came up with a research paper in, I think University of California. They published a paper about, there are certain libraries available which could make us interact with native libraries in Rust is available. But we figured out that later on. It was not available because nobody tried it. Nobody looked at it before. So that's what's interesting. Sometimes you try to do something and make headway, and after some time you figure out that, okay, there was an easy way out. So So all of
Exactly.
these are the challenges that we face along the way. Yeah, but now I think we have actually settled down on our architecture, and we have a picture in mind what we're
Interesting.
building.
If you could share maybe some details on how exactly you will deal with sort of transaction capacity, because like from my perspective, if you're building the order book based DAX, you will need to provide your users with like at least market makers with the ability of free transactions when it comes to order
Yep.
placing into your order book, right? So another
Yep.
thing, it should be really high frequency transactions. And if you cannot provide your users with this high frequency trading experience, eventually you end up in a very bad situation when you actually literally will not find your niche. Because
Yep.
to be honest, like those who are trading on the high volumes, they don't give a shit about exchanges with which don't provide them with this kind of experience, right? With which will not be like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not talking about even like fixed protocol. Okay, so we can forget about that, but it's still it's doable, right? But the main question is whether I can make things real fast, right? So that it will be no arbitrage or front running or something. Like front running is not the biggest problem, but yeah, like from my perspective, the bigger problem could be the arbitrage between different other exchanges, which way faster than your DAX, right? And like for example, DYDX for them, the obvious solution for all these kind of things was moving to Starkware, to rolling out their technology, which is like on the another like on the second layer on top of the Ethereum network, and that allowed them to basically solve a lot of problems with scalability within their project. So what's your perspective on that? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier, right? See, when
Yeah,
it
yeah.
came to because the first iteration that we built on chain, it was like the either delta, the same thing that is in Ethereum. So it was okay to have that published, but we didn't want to actually go through the same cycle again. We know what will happen, like it's just another on-chain DEX that wouldn't actually live up to the expectations of traders, like you mentioned. They are looking for high frequency trading. They wanted to utilize the arbitrage opportunity. They want to have these transactions, to be able to place thousands of transactions in a second, and so that they can actually have their algorithms take real-time decisions in milliseconds. So it came about when we actually started interacting with market makers. We started to talk to them what they're looking for. So that's the reason why we were thinking hard at how to secure that. Even if you take control of the funds for a short period of time with a small threshold window for security, right? A small threshold window where you can allow these order matching to be done in a high frequency environment, how to take control of that. Because if we had done a similar experiment with on BitShares many few years ago, um, that was also a concept called vested wallet. But here the fact is that when you take that control, it is also important that the operator or somebody who's running that hardware should not have the capacity to manipulate the balances and manipulate the assets that are actually being placed for trade. So that's how we came across this, architecture, which Fala was working on, TEE. Basically, it's a trusted execution environment, which is
Right.
allowing the transactions to be executed on inside the processor in a encrypted manner. So we thought, okay, that's another reason why we extended the block time to 12 seconds. So 12-second window is what the hacker will have to actually exploit. But in a distributed network, when you look at it, the chances of that is very, very low. So when you we minimize the risk, and considering the trade-off that you have against the advantages that you get by having that environment is will completely dramatically change the experience of the user. So what we're trying to do is, for 12 seconds, the hardware will take control in an encrypted way and allow these trades to be placed and canceled or whatever it is. And in 12 seconds, whatever the state of the balances will get
Just be
snapshot.
captured
The snapshot
snapshot
will
of it.
go into the
Yeah.
blockchain. Yeah. So
Mhm.
that way we get best of both things, right? And also the fact that the operator has limited access to it, the chances for that to get into any sort of compromise is very, very, very low. So that's how we solve that problem. but the problem there was, Substrate did not natively talk to this, the CPU. And there is no, reusable code anywhere available to allow this to have the runtime talk to the, the CPU environment on the other side. And I think there's a lot of research going on the hardware level in terms of open source TEs, which are going to be public in the future, probably, which may make it mainstream. I think there are a lot of use cases happening with the hardware level security for especially these kind of use cases where you probably need to have, you know, encrypted or trusted environment, which will allow transactions at least for a few brief seconds, and then so that you can actually transfer that back to the blockchain, because blockchain inherently, right now with the current state of block time and the time of execution, it's difficult to compress that many transactions. Yeah, but maybe at some point with zero knowledge proof we can solve that. But still, that's in a very nascent stage. We are not ready for production yet. So until then, we thought this is the best trade-off we can make to give that experience to the users.
Right.
Yep.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
We have to play with what we have, right? You can't, engineer everything. Even then, we had to go through a lot of trouble trying to work around many of the things that we expected was there. For example, the interoperability with Ethereum, for example, because when you're designing the application, you again have to think about what is the user going to go through when he starts using it, when he logs in. What does he have to do to interact with the blockchain? Whether he needs to acquire a token or can he directly jump and start placing trades? That's when the whole thing again got complicated, where you can't expect people to buy that coin and this coin and finally end up with a lot of coins to start moving your token for trading. Right? So that's been the biggest challenge in designing. Yeah.
Exactly, and from the user experience, it's kind of the controversial decision why you exactly need to move your asset from one network to another, being trustful towards the particular technical solution like bridge or something, so that basically be confident that the funds will be there untouched, and it will be working, like you will be able to withdraw funds from the particular system. Eventually it will not be hacked or something. So it's a kind of decision, right? And you need to think twice, like when you're moving your assets specifically from Ethereum to some whatever network to do like some trades, there should be a clear reasoning behind that. However, again, if the technology works out, if you're providing the smooth user experience and stuff, and this kind of trading things works like real fast, that might be a good reasoning for people to switch from one network to another.
Yeah. I think I tried out a few bridges, but that was clearly weird, to be honest. I tried even to move if you look at the Polka BTC, how it's moved, it's you don't expect your friends to use that. It's completely insane. I'm not saying, like, it may look insane now, but probably in due course of time it will improve. But the way it is right now is not really what we would want the users to go through. That's been one of the reasons why we were trying hard to see if there's any other way to natively connect, and that's how we came across this a new protocol, and how to see that. There's been a lot of progress in cryptography in the last 4 years if you look at some of the papers that is published. So we were able to make some breakthroughs. I think that is right now under audit. I don't want to speak a lot about it, because I'll wait for maybe a couple of weeks it should be out. And we really want that environment to be battle tested. If it works, that is great. I think the way it is looking, it's been working in smaller environments with smaller sizes of networks. But I think if it works in a larger network, nothing like it. I mean, that'll be when I first saw it, probably found out like the holy grail of moving tokens from one side to the other. So these are kind of things which you never know, until you put it out there and have people use it, but at least it solves the problem of the relative friction you have when you move, and the cost you pay when you move one token to the other. So that's what the ultimate thing that you need to try and resolve to have mainstream adoption, right? At least that's what we want to try and solve.
Interesting. And like you mentioned bridging, which is kind of interesting, like very important part of every project, which considers to be cross chain, right? And
Yep.
like how we approach that at Equilibrium, we just have taken the code base, which was initially developed for chain safe bridge, and we basically adopted
I
that
know.
for ourselves. We basically deeply reworked for that because it initially didn't solve our sort of issues, and we didn't manage to get what we wanted out of that bridge. So we deeply reworked that, and eventually we deployed like 3 bridges which are currently up and running with our Kusama based project. Specifically with the Ethereum BC, we also deployed the bridge to Hiko. We're looking to a few other ecosystems which are EVM compatible, and currently they're running on the basis of our relayers and from the number of validators who are validating the blocks in our standalone chains. And basically, this is how we currently solving that. But it's like not the best way to solve that, because like if you're eventually we're looking at the other bridges, right? Because we don't actually want to deploy our own bridges to every single blockchain in the future. So here I'm curious, like how you currently approach that. You mentioned that you had some experience with
Yep.
Polkadex and stuff. So like how do you do that, and what's
Yeah,
the
we looked
plan?
at a lot of solutions out there. Okay, we started off with yeah, chain safe and chain bridge, and then we looked at we also have snow bridge. There's another one.
Snowbridge, yeah.
Yeah, the first easiest one was chain safe because that was the first audited code available for someone to actually go ahead and use it. But the reason why we didn't stick to that is because it uses a centralized set of relayers, right? So ultimately, we were trying to decentralize the whole interoperability method. So we weren't really happy with the way the relayers need to be maintained, and you ultimately need to come up with another way to actually, you know, get these relayers to be decentralized through some gaming mechanism for including people who come and run it for you. Otherwise, you have to run it. Then the whole idea again is gone for a waste, right? Because you're trying to create a system that would run on its own. So that's the reason why we wanted to stay away from chain bridge after some time. Then we looked at Snowfork. Snowfork looked actually very promising with the way they're that's when we started deeply looking at how the whole thing worked with the light clients and everything, like verification, verifying the proof of confirmation and all of those things. But unluckily for us, we were in touch with the team, but unfortunately they couldn't get an audited code out to be used by our project in time. I think it's still not. I don't know if it's still audited and ready to use, but so that was one of the reasons why we couldn't still wait for Snowbridge, Snowfork to start using ours. So we parallelly started working on in our own way for another way to solve this problem. That's how we solved it finally. The one we have right now. That code is under audit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually looking very promising. Apart from one or two major issues that they found out, it works. You know, so if it
So
goes
is
out,
it
that can be one of the ways that like you can look at how interoperability can happen in the future.
interesting? And is that the complete decentralized bridge, or how is it?
It's a fully decentralized. Yeah, there's no bridge actually. It's basically it's basically cryptographical proof of holding the funds and also using light clients verifying transactions. So that's how we try to solve that. Yeah. But I don't want to get too many into details. It is going to come out in another, I think, in a couple of weeks. At least by end of February, the code should be out. If the final stages of audit, the way it is looking, it's good. But another issue is the issue with the runtime. Runtime can hold only so much of transactions or executions. So
Mm-hmm.
when you look at scaling, right? So that's another challenge we're facing, and we also have found out some workaround for that. When you wanted to add more chains in the future, right? We can't just stick with Ethereum, right? We need more chains to be added on to the system. So these are some of the things that actually I think we can share in the future for any other projects to take it up and use it, because it's of course going to be released in time. That's why, like, many things we had to finally build it on our own, just because things are not ready yet in many ways. Because the reason why it's most of the projects are focused on a specific problem, right? A specific protocol or a specific thing. But
Right.
we are so focused. We wanted to release the product, and we can't keep waiting because people are so we have to solve these problems quickly as possible. Otherwise, we would never release the product in time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like infrastructural problems sometimes make you lose focus on the main, like the core developments you should be focused on, right? So like if you're building DEX, you're not supposed to be building bridges.
Exactly. It's bad business, actually.
Yeah.
I've been advised by so many of our investors, why are you trying to solve everybody's problem? But thing is, I said it's not everybody's problem, because there's no solution to those things. So until that is solved, we don't have the product. So that's been a big bottleneck. So the main reason why this is getting delayed and delayed and delayed. But I think it's a matter of time. But I think the next couple of years this should be more mature. Especially the Polkadexer ecosystem should be more mature with whatever we have with Substrate. The libraries available to be used. It should be much more mature.
Exactly. Yeah. We're looking forward to that, and hopefully projects will be onboarded in the Polkadot ecosystem faster rather than they're being approved right now, right? Because 2 weeks for the auction is a little bit slow from my perspective. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is my personal opinion. Just, I'm not trying to put it out there and to sound like as a propaganda for that. But okay.
I think we can only work with what we have. That's another issue. We can always. I'm sure for sure that I know you're raising your voice in whatever way you can. But yeah, for us, I think it's just one of the components that to worry about. There's so many, we also have many things to look at. So I still think it's in the starting phase, right? So probably with more experience, probably with on-chain governance, these things can be improved in the future. Maybe I'm just hoping that's the best bet that we can look at, right?
Exactly, and we are building this future all together. So like a lot of things rely on projects actually, and even on ourselves. Well, cool. What's your experience?
Questions?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. I was thinking, there are some questions out there, so maybe
just maybe my last question to you, and then we can start picking that from the questionnaire.
You're asking me that. Yeah.
So what was your experience with the Crowdloan and Polkadot so far? Like, what's going on?
Well, I think there's no reason to complain from our side, because we were late to batch 2, because we were able to release our parachain ID only by, I think, the 3rd week of January. So you can imagine. So it's just hardly been a couple of weeks, and we would have liked to have more time to go for the batch 2. And the reason why we got delayed is because we are the first chain that was actually going to use the new method to actually convert a mainnet to a parachain. It's like a seedling parachain. So seedling parachain code was actually released at the last moment. In fact, the team at Parity finished work on that before Christmas, but they didn't actually submit their pull request. It just didn't get released to the main code. So we were waiting for that. There was no other way for us to other than wait for it before we release the ID. How can we just go and do it, right? Because this is the first, actually, Polkadex parachain is the first seedling parachain. And we are the first test case for that. That's why it got delayed. Otherwise, we would have just released it much earlier. But then it has its own consequence. Like you see, we didn't have enough time to actually gather the resources to go ahead full throttle and make it happen. But then we know that for sure. It's a long journey. So and also the fact that we also have we also have our interoperability module with Ethereum, so it doesn't stop us from releasing the product and get going, right? So while we wait on the parachain, we can perfect many other things that are lying around, right? We can perfect the interoperability layer, we can announce boundary programs, we can have the different functions of the TEE and the interface, how they interact and how they basically come around. So all of these things, can be done in the meanwhile, while we wait for the parachain. That's the plan for now.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. And maybe even parachains will become a little bit cheaper than now, right?
Absolutely, I think so. Because some of the figures I saw in the beginning is like, oh my God, that's like, how do you justify? Yeah, it's completely, it was kind of hyped up in the beginning. It's always will be. But let's see if they can, make it economic sense as it moves along. There is a game in play, right? So it'll adjust itself. That's what we think.
Right.
Yeah. So, Alex, why don't we just quickly take up some of the questions do you have any specific, do you see these questions yourself?
Yes, I see the questions here in the questionnaire section.
Yeah, I think the first one is about, it's about the partnership and how Equilibrium and Polkadex is, how these things will play out together, right? So maybe I can just throw some light and then you can also add some, because ultimately I think you are already partnered, because we are very thankful for allowing Polkadex to be listed on the platform. And we are fundraising through Equilibrium. I think a major share is actually coming through your platform. So that is good. That is the start of the partnership. And also when you look at the future, all of these parachains are one way or the other linked together in terms of it's all, the primary seed is all actually the same, right? Because even if you have different ways of attracting liquidity and getting people reap the rewards of DeFi when these things will be utilized in many applications in the future. So we are also deeply dependent on liquidity. So these are things that can play in the future, right? Movement of, we can move this liquidity around in much more smoothly if we are parachains. Yeah, so that's the first question. Do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add maybe that we are, like, first of all, we are super excited about this partnership with Polkadex on their crowdloan campaign, and we are striving to bring as much value as we can. So we definitely not feel that we're in the position of competition here. We're actually quite, generously helping all the partners who are listed on our platform, specifically those who are considering us as one of the sort of main instruments for fundraising in terms of the crowdloan campaign. And like, if like we don't get the slots in this batch, and both, like, you guys will get, or there will be different sequence in terms of this event. Doesn't matter. Eventually, we'll all together will be embedded on Polkadot, and they will be working together on the cross-chain interoperable future. And like, the more ecosystem will be liquid, the more user activity will be out there, the more sort of TVL will be in the Polkadot-based projects, the more ecosystem will benefit from all these kind of things. So, like, we are mutually beneficial here, right? So it's a kind of win-win situation.
Absolutely. I think most of the interactions with other projects is always going to benefit each other, especially in terms of the total volume, like you said, and attracting more people from overall, from other ecosystems, and creating better products in the future, right? With all this infrastructure in place.
That's true.
Yep. I think, where do you see in 5 years? Do you have anything in your mind?
Well, so our vision initially was to become the super app for DeFi. So we wanted to embrace every single use case that you can see on the market, and the approach was to also to bring into that like more sort of more best practices from the world of traditional finance. I already mentioned a few of them, including like risk-based approach to pricing, portfolio margining, and the bailout functionality that we have implemented. And we expect that in 5 years from now, it will play out pretty well. So we'll be managed to get quite a decent user base, a decent TVL. And, you know, the goal for us is to provide users with a very decent user experience. That's like at some point, we definitely will be building also the mobile version of our platform so that like you can use us on every single device that you have in your pocket. And yeah, so in 5 years, expectedly, will become the real interoperable application, which will be working seamlessly with any single blockchain network you can even imagine in the space, providing the whole spectrum of DeFi functionality just in a single place. And you won't be forced to switch between DeFi, you know, protocols to make money, and just you will be making money just in one single place, which makes a lot of sense. And yeah, so like all the technical aspects of the platform definitely will be under the hood, and you will just enjoy your perfect user experience on the platform. So that's the vision in 5 years.
Perfect. I think with Polkadex, I've you know, repeated this many times over. We want to be the perfect exchange. I wouldn't even call DEX, you know, the de facto exchange to actually trade crypto assets. That's what we want to be, and at least the leading player in that space by creating the infrastructure that is needed to make that happen. And there's an interesting question here with regards to future bridges from other ecosystems to Polkadex. What do you make of Vitalik's recent comments regarding security of cross-chain bridges? Well, yes, we read that. How much security is sacrificed to make cross-chain bridges economically viable? This is exactly the reason why we have done away with the bridges. We're not using centralized bridges or decentralized bridges anymore. We're actually making that happen through a cross-chain cryptographic-based, proof-based interoperability. It is an ATM interoperability that is going to be tried out in the orderbook DEX for the first time. So it's going to be released in a month's time. So probably we can have that when it is released. We completely agree. I think moving forward, we need to have better solutions, because having these sort of honeypot situations can be tricky in the future as well, as far as security is concerned, right? Decentralizing the layers, everything's become a big headache right now. Yeah.
I can also give few insights on that. So like my perspective that you always need to think of your developments as from the perspective of minimum viable products, right? So you need to come up with some MVPs first to figure out that particular use case or particular ecosystem works out, and you got your users, you got some liquidity volume from the specific ecosystem, and you just need to test the water first before you getting into the full scale development or something. So it definitely presumes certain trade-offs in terms of centralization or decentralization. In our case, we decided to be more centralized here, but to make sure that we have tested everything through before we move on the next step. Because I know as an engineer, I know how complicated to build the truly decentralized solution, and how complex this solution can be, and how what was the issues behind making this solution are really real fast and real sort of capable to hold the huge amount of transaction, like on the full scale of of production scale, I would say. So from my perspective, it's better to come up with something first, which will be still safe, right? It doesn't mean that you will roll out something which will be vulnerable in the face of some hackers or whatever. there will be just small trade-off, right? So it will be more centralized. So you will need to have some trusted counterparties who will be involved in everything. But still, if you manage to make it right and to build your bridge, which is really decentralized, and hopefully you will pass the audit. Really appreciate your efforts. I admire your kind of the path of true believers and the effort that you spent on doing that. I personally know how difficult to build this up. So
completely agree, Alex. I think some of the trade-offs are acceptable at this point in time, right? Because even the things that have been tried out, you never know how it plays out in the larger network and things like that.
Right.
So everything is appreciated at this point, because even when you look at the exchanges itself, right? Without the centralized exchanges, the adoption wouldn't have happened or reached to this point. So everything has a role to play as we move forward. So I think different experiments need to be done. It should be promoted. It should be tried out. In spite of all the security issues that we have, I think there is no one holy grail solution to everything, because everybody is trying in their own unique way to solve some of the problems, right?
Right.
So it doesn't really matter, like for us, it was the friction that, more than the security. I mean, I just added and supported with that. Like that's all, more than the security, it was the experience that prompted us to actually look at more of a getting rid of that intermediate layer so that we can remove another cost in moving that fund, right? So that was the reason why we went ahead and did more research on having some native connectivity to the other chains. But anyways, like we have to wait and see how this interoperability, evolves. What could be the perfect solution, we are yet to see.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a question about PDEX token appears in the when the PDEX token appears in the Gen 0 application as an asset for collateral and borrowing, and will Gens and EQ be sold on Polkadex immediately after launch? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So we definitely would love to embrace more assets from .Sama ecosystem. So we're currently working on the XEM integrations with projects that have been deployed on the Kusama networks. So hopefully we'll come up with a few big announcements very soon, and you guys will be able to get a hands-on experience with different assets outside of Jinchir, but in the .Sama ecosystem, not rather than assets that we already have on Jinchir from Ethereum and BC or Hiko. So yeah, we're definitely looking forward to having the opportunity to work with you guys and integrate like to bridge assets from your parachains into our ecosystem. Since I believe you guys don't have any deployments on Kusama, do you?
Sorry, come again?
So I believe that you guys don't have any Kusama deployments yet, do you?
Not right now, because we don't have the economics to support that, because we would have to come up with other tokens to, on Kusama and then move, so we didn't do that.
Exactly. So in this case, we actually will need to either integrate via XM on Polkadot, or to build a bridge between Jinchir and Polkadex parachain. So it's kind of the matter of time and the matter of consideration.
I think they're also working on the Kusama Polkadot bridges, right? So I think things should get better from here.
They do, but I'm sure that they have such a lot of things on their plate, so that it will be not the high priority to bridge assets between these two ecosystems that far.
Yeah, right. Yeah, from our side, even we wanted to see how we can help out the projects in Substrate, to have native listing in the DEX once it opens up, right? That's also another way to unlock value for some of the projects that are being listed on Polkadot. So if we have the parachain, that makes it easier for those tokens to be listed on the Polkadex order book when that is ready. That's the best we can do at this point.
Sure. Yeah. So that definitely will be open to adding. The collateral part is a little bit tricky, because you need to have real liquid collateral. I'm sure that you guys will make it at some point. Initially, it could be a little bit risky, because we have this bailout functionality and we cannot add any single token right at the moment as collateral asset. However, we're working on some mechanisms which will allow for doing so by setting higher sort of collateralization requirements for particular assets. But what we definitely will be able to do is to add as a bailout liquidity token, so that you can use it for staking in the bailout, like in the liquidity pool for bailouts on Jinchira. And that's something that we can easily do like real fast.
Okay, thanks. I think that is interesting. We can, look into that in the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think many of the others are mostly Polkadex related questions, but I would rather give more. There's another one for, can we get information on why? Okay. Personality. Yeah, just to put a general question out there, which will be helpful for, I think, for everyone. So since you have these protocols ready to go live, do you have any plans to promote your ecosystem, or you have any plans to have your own ecosystem where other applications can utilize Equilibrium for building stuff on top of it?
So we are thinking of that, and potentially if we get the slots, we definitely would love to see more projects being maybe deployed on our parachain at some point, because it will help us to get more liquidity users and stuff. That's by far. So the one thing, like potentially, like I know that for example, like how they have their EVM module or EVM pallets running on their parachain. I don't know what, like I know that for example Moonbeam, they put a lot of customization on that, so it's customized like the EVM, the native EVM implementation by Parity. Not sure that Akala did the same, but anyways, like I think like if you have the EVM palette running on your parachain, it simplifies the overall opportunity for other projects to come in and basically deploy their Solidity codes on your parachain. So
right.
we were considering the same path, and in the future potentially we will do that. For now, we are very much focused on building our own projects, like our own products, to be honest. So that's the main focus.
Okay.
What about yourself?
Right.
What
so
do you think of? What about yourself? What about yourself? What do you think of that?
We of course want to, see. We definitely ended up with some of the things that we try to resolve. Is one of the issues when you looked at Uniswap and the people complaining about raising funds in Uniswap. And when I spoke to some of the teams that are currently involved in raising funds, like we ourselves raised in Polkastarter. So I think that most of the teams have that problem with the way it's structured. Example, a lot of front running and rug pulling happening when the tokens get listed. So that's why we wanted to build out the IDO. So in doing so, we have actually found certain things that were new to the system. One was avoiding the gas fees using staking mechanism, and then avoiding the front running by randomizing transactions. So all of these was available in Substrate. So we were able to pull that out, and so we want more applications could be actually built on top of it. So even though our focus is on the order book, we would rather encourage more applications to be built on Polkadex blockchain, who are looking for high frequency trading to be one of the key features to run their business, and finally settle it on a blockchain. So any sort of application that needs high frequency transactions with blockchain's security of assets and custody, we definitely want to encourage that. So that is something we will be focusing in the future. So we've already started to see many of these people have the similar sort of problem. So once we're able to solve it on order book, it's a classic case which others can actually take up and use the code, and it just works, right? If you're able to solve it, it should work for them too. So yeah,
right,
definitely we're going to do that. All right. Yep, I think some of the others are, yeah, it's about, what was the hardest decision you made, Alex, in your last few years of building on Equilibrium?
Definitely the hardest, like it was not the hardest decision, but we had to make our own research on which ecosystem we'll be targeting in the future. When we were choosing the particular technology platform where we want to build our sort of cross-chain technology, and there were a few options, and eventually we ended up building on Polkadot. So again, it was not the hardest decision because the choice was quite obvious, and Polkadot is really one of the most advanced platforms. But it was a kind of decision, so we had to make it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, for us, I think it was the decision to go ahead with the TE architecture. That was the hardest decision, which actually gives a different sort of a complexity to the whole architecture. Yeah, if you ask me, that was our hardest decision, I would say. Yep. All right, I think it's been an hour, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we can wrap up. If you have any concluding words, please, Alex, and then we can just finish it up.
Yeah, again, I just wanted to thank everyone who joined us today, watched us, and listened to our conclusions on different things around Polkadot and stuff. Hopefully it was an interesting conversation for you guys. At least for me, it was really, really great to touch base on all these kind of things. Yeah, if you want to support crowd loans, and specifically Polkadexers crowd loans, please go to our platform, to xDOT, and start doing that. You can find all the information at xDOT.equilibrium.io, and you will find Polkadex on the list of the projects. Please support the guys with your dots putting into that, and yeah, we definitely would love to see everyone on our platform, and hopefully you guys will make it to get a parachain slots real soon.
Yeah, likewise, Alex. I think I encourage everybody to contribute to Equilibrium as well. I think you have very much in line in getting one of those slots coming up. So, and thanks again for having Polkadex on your platform, and the whole Equilibrium team, for supporting us. And thank you for everybody for joining. And it was a pleasure talking to you, Alex, today. Have
Absolutely.
a great weekend.
Thank you. You too, man. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Take care.
Bye-bye.